Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to the second to last vlog regarding Marvel's Iron Fist. So today is going to be an interesting day, so let's go ahead and, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cover the last two episodes and my thoughts on them individually, and then later on in the day, you're going to get a finale vlog, basically going over my overall thoughts on the season, whether or not I think it was as bad as the internet thought, or things like that. So let's go ahead and start things off with episode 12. We were already at a rough spot. The Hand was set to kill Colleen, which Danny went in and saved her. Davos wasn't happy about that. And on top of that, Harold was getting ready to do something very dastardly. And with the help of Joy, no less. The next episode actually involves Ward getting back into the fray. We actually go back to him in a psychiatric institution, the same one that Danny was in, where he starts to have the really bad feeling like Harold is going to contact Joy. And he's having nightmares about it. And who just so happens to come in but Bakuto. Bakuto just happens to have a drug that actually helps with the synthetic heroin, at least the withdrawal symptoms, and offers that if we work together, I will not only take care of Harold, but I will make sure that you're in the position of power and we'll work together instead of Gao and Harold. So Ward obviously takes this, but has the caveat that he wants Joy saved. He does not want Joy involved in this situation, and thus says, I will help you, but only when Joy is out of the situation. We've already seen how well Bakuto follows those kinds of instructions, so that's not necessarily going to work, but now we have an alliance between Ward and Bakuto. Danny is still trying to figure out how to handle his overall situation. They were supposed to take out Bakuto, and then he came across Colleen, and now he has this really big problem with Colleen and Davos, basically being an angel and a devil on his shoulder. Where Colleen is trying to tell him to continue to be the person that he has been throughout this series. Davos is basically telling him, you have been raised as a monk, you've been told what the Iron Fist is, you need to fulfill your duty to the Hand, or to Kunlun, but also destroy the Hand. So you have that but that big dialogue going on between the two of them, but they both are in agreement. Bakuto needs to be taken care of. And this is where a lot of the main events start to take place. Bakuto then invades Harold's apartment because he knows exactly what Harold's trying to do, and thus basically takes the entire Meacham family hostage. And the way he does that is he actually sends Ward in first to see if maybe he can get Joy out of there. Doesn't really work. But then they up the ante a little bit. First of all, Bakuto calls up Danny and shoots Joy, and basically says, if you want her back, if you want her helped, you need to come here because I want my Iron Fist. And also takes Harold hostage and threatens to permanently kill Harold in front of Joy. So already this is a very volatile situation, and Danny gets there in the nick of time so that he can have his little final battle with Bakuto. And with the help of Davos and Colleen, is able to take down Bakuto. And most of the episode is pretty much this fight scene and trying to track down Bakuto and finally kill him. And in turn, the final act is done by Colleen, which is more appropriate in that regard. Where she actually defeats him, but Davos ain't taking any of it and actually does the final blow. Which Danny isn't too happy about. But this is also another key problem. Is Davos is slowly starting to feel like Danny is going soft. And thus they have it out. They finally have their confrontation, and Davos leaves very disappointed with Danny's decisions. Basically setting up Davos as like a potential villain later on. But it's actually a really cool concept because it's basically embodying like Danny getting over his raising in Kunlun. So I really did like how they did that. I also liked the fight between Colleen and Bakuto. It allowed for her to have this whole self-reflection and basically to say that I am not like you. You may say I'm weak. You may say I'm worthless, but I'm not you, and I will never be you. And so that's a really cool concept. But unfortunately, while their back was turned because of the Davos fight, Bakuto then disappears. We're assuming that the Hand came in and found him. And the episode ends with everything seeming to be on the up and up, everything being taken care of, with Colleen and Danny in the dojo just, doing Tai Chi, or morning exercises until the DEA crashes into the dojo to apprehend Danny. Well, Colleen and Danny aren't having any of that, and the episode ends with them on the run. Episode 13, or actually, and I also should point this out, this goes into episode 13, is that just before the DEA attacked, Danny was getting messages from Ward saying, Harold has set you up, you need to get out of there. Episode 13, so now that we've taken care of Bakuto, 13 is completely about taking care of Harold. And this is where a lot of the comic stuff that I know of actually comes into play. Harold has been the true villain of this season, and it now is shown with Danny on the run, and also Harold coming back into the light. He's now back in regular life, which starts to freak out a lot of people, including some Rand executives, and even Jerry Hogarth comes in and sees that he's alive, and notices that it's fraud on the highest scale and all that. But back to the point at hand, Colleen and Danny are on the run. They eventually go find Claire and try and get Jerry Hogarth to meet with them, where they come up with their overall plan. The DEA has basically blamed all of the drug scandals out of Rand on Danny, and all because of evidence from Harold. And so we start to have the battle lines drawn between Danny and Harold. Before we go into that, because that's, again, a majority of this plot line, we have a little bit of backwards business to take care of. Ward and Joy. Ward actually tries to go to Joy and try to earn back his trust, and she's not having any of it. She thinks he's still on the drugs. She still very much wants to trust Harold. But he says enough to actually get her to go to Rand and confront Harold. So she goes from a hospital bed, recovering, to going to confront Harold, realizes that he has been lying this entire time. He's fabricated the evidence that he got from Danny to frame Danny, and is not having any of it. In fact, she just basically steps away from all of it. She gets into a car and leaves before the battleground is set. And this sets things up for the final confrontation with Danny and Harold Meacham. Or Danny Rand and Harold Meacham, where they do try to get the tablet that has all of the evidence. So Ward actually helps out with that, helps Colleen get the tablet to Claire and Colleen so they can submit it to the DEA, as well as get it over to Jerry Hogarth. But Danny has a very crucial choice to make. Earlier on in the episode, he actually meets with Madame Gao to see if he can get any information about Harold, and this is where he learns the horrible truth. It wasn't Gao that killed his parents, it was Harold. Harold organized their destruction, and now he has a very crucial choice to make, because he needs to get revenge on Harold, but this can end two ways. He can get his revenge and forever corrupt himself, or he can be the better man. He can be the true Iron Fist, is how Gao put it. So we have a big fight scene on the top floor of Rand. We literally go to the executive floor of Rand Enterprises and then up to the roof. And things are set up roughly that Danny can strike the final blow. In fact, he catches Harold on like a bit of rebar so he's stuck, and he could land the final blow. But right at that point where he's still very much having we're having a lot of that distortion stuff that's been happening throughout the series, he then starts to realize he has a point of clarity. And the weirdest part is because it's because of two landing lights that are right above Harold, and it reminds him of himself going into the cave to confront the dragon to become the Iron Fist. And that's the moment where he realizes that he would sink down to Harold's level if he killed him. And thus has decided he's not going to do that. And that's a really powerful moment. It actually, this is the Iron Fist that I know from like Ultimate Spider-Man and all that. I haven't read too much of the comics, so this is the Iron Fist that I thought I was going to get, and it was amazing. But Harold ain't having any of that crap because he still wants to kill Danny. He's done with the Rands. He makes one shot. We get to have an epic moment where the fist actually deflects the bullet, and Ward does the final shot. He actually kills off his own father, and things start to wrap things up. So again, they have the whole issue of Harold resurrecting, but thankfully, Bakuto bragged how to actually kill Harold. So they do that, which is basically to cut his head off. But they also incinerate him just to make sure that no remains are left of Harold. He can't come back. And Ward and Danny get to have kind of that final talk where they're sorting out their feelings on the whole situation. Ward even offers for Danny to come back to Rand, and Danny refuses. He's just like, you know what, I'll be the rich guy, but I'm not a businessman, and this is really in your court. Which Ward is already worried about because a lot of his advice was coming from Harold. We also get to have Jerry Hogarth there to have part of that and witness the incineration to know that he has been cremated. He's done. But then the episode ends on kind of two notes. First of all, we end in another remote country because Gao is now freed after Danny confronted her. And we start to see two people talking, Joy Meacham and Davos, which basically hint at the fact that Danny is in trouble should there be a season 2, because now Davos works for Gao. Very interesting turn, but that's not the only turn we get. As a final resolution, now that Danny has taken care of his problems, he has resolved in the dojo that he is going to go back to Kunlun, and he is going to fulfill his duty as the Iron Fist. Claire's not happy with that, and neither is Colleen. But they accept it, and actually Danny in turn invites Colleen to come with him to Kunlun. And the last scenes that we get are them scaling the mountain to go into the pass, except there are corpses of the Hand, and Kunlun is nowhere to be found. So it's a really great season ender to hint at a possible season 2. I don't know if this had enough acclaim to get a season 2, but I also have a feeling that the events of Iron Fist season 1 are going to be a proper lead up to the Defenders. So that's going to be an awesome one. My thoughts on the episodes is great. This is a great way to set up the finale because we had multiple villains in this series. Unlike Luke Cage, where we had a very clear villain set, Jessica Jones, a very clear villain. Daredevil had multiple villains and had to do that too, but Iron Fist did it really, really well. We get resolution with Bakuto, but he may not entirely be done. We get resolution with Harold. We know he's done. He's not coming back, but there's now a potential threat in Joy and Davos. So I really did like how these end, or how these episodes end, and that's going to go ahead and do it for this vlog. So tune in later on today as I give my final thoughts on Iron Fist Season 1, whether or not there should be a Season 2, whether or not this excites me for Defenders, and whether or not I agree with the internet that this was not as good as everything else that came before. Until then.